and welcome to the DYOJO Podcast. There is no way of explaining the terror I felt. Whew. Oscar worthy, right? I mean, so you may not get the reference, but that is me impersonating Johnny Depp, impersonating Hunter S. Thompson on the rather eclectic, shall we say, drug-induced stupor of the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Why the crap do I bring this up, you ask? Good question. So, answer, Michelle Blevins. Duh. That'd be great if I just left it there and then immediately went into the podcast. I'm sure Michelle would appreciate that immensely. But, okay, context. Michelle Blevins, senior editor-in-chief of the premier magazine media outlet for property restoration, R&R Magazine, is our guest today on the podcast. And we were talking about why it is that so many companies are still so stinking scared of social media and the free resource to help, communicate and expand their brand. And so I was saying, and you'll catch that in the podcast if you listen to it, that maybe a good title for this would be Fear and Loathing in Social Media as a play on words. Well, a few podcasts I have been listening to, and many of you may already be aware of this, but Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the movie, is based on a book of the same title, a novel written by Hunter S. Thompson. And apparently the backstory was that Thompson was interviewing attorney and activist Oscar Zeta Acosta in March and April of 1971. Good year, right? But speaking of Fear and Loathing, if you subscribe to our YouTube page, as well as our Spotify and Apple Podcast page, you will never have to fear missing an episode of the DYOJO Podcast again. Don't loathe your failure to click that subscribe button. Do it today. There is no way of explaining the terror I felt. Okay, that kind of veered more into Agent What's-His-Face from Matrix. The terror I felt. Mr. Anderson. That's terrible. That's terrible. Mr. Anderson. Try it again. Everybody's enamored. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. Now we're in Silence of the Lambs. It puts the lotion on its skin or it gets the holes.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
This, I would say a new low, but a new high. If you're still listening, Wikipedia continues. The first trip resulted from an expose Thompson was writing for Rolling Stone magazine about the Mexican-American television journalist Ruben Salazar, whom officers of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department had shot and killed with a tear gas grenade fired at close range during the National Chicano Moratorium March against the Vietnam War in 1970. Okay, so that kind of brings things into perspective. There's a lot of similar things going on right now. Acosta was a key source for the story, and they had reservations about conducting their interview in LA, so they took a trip to Vegas, right? If you can't do it in LA, go to Vegas. From what I recall, the movie is much less coherent than this brief on the backstory, but every writer and creative has their process, right? So, I want to say, just to clarify, you may be wondering, but there was significantly less drug use in my conversation with Michelle Blevins.
Do you think that smoking drugs is cool? Do you think that doing alcohol is cool?
Oh, she's gonna love this. But and thankfully, we don't have to make a trip out of town to conduct our interview, as Zoom is the new portal for business conversations. We did talk about the hope and potential for some conventions to be back in operation in the fall, as well as some of the fun projects that Michelle is involved with for those organizations. I delayed a little bit in releasing this because Michelle was also a guest on the GMS podcast. Whoops, I'm pointing to the wrong GMS podcast with Jared Steer. And they talk a lot about, they met through conventions and trade shows and those kinds of things. So they have a really good conversation about things and people that they've met along the way. So I didn't want to conflict with that. Apparently, great minds think alike. And both of us had reached out to Michelle. And so yeah, please check that out. They have a great conversation about those kinds of things, networking and conventions and trade shows in the industry. So Michelle shares her experiences with communicating and branding. Again, back to the fear and loathing in social media. Rather than approaching social media with fear and loathing, for the DYOJO Podcast, episode 25, we discuss various approaches to thriving by building a clear culture, developing a consistent product, and communicating what makes your organization unique. So, Michelle Blevins is the editor-in-chief of Restoration and Remediation Magazine, R&R. She's also a recruiter for Wylander Solutions. So, she has a lot of experience within the industry, and she's one of the few professionals we've had on the podcast that are working in the field they set out for and studied as she went to school for journalism. And she shared that her aspirations were initially in journalism. She did journalism. So apparently, I need a speaking class. Prior to R&R, she was executive producer for Heritage Broadcasting. Michelle is constantly working behind the scenes to keep relevant content flowing for the property restoration industry's premier media outlet, as well as innovating ideas such as the Women in Restoration Award and this year's first, hopefully annual, the Ladder Award for young professionals in the property restoration industry. So Michelle is very hopeful that the experience will still be happening, I believe in September we talk about, where they will announce the winner of the Ladder Award and hopefully have young professionals on a panel to discuss, their experiences in the industry. So, so grateful to Michelle for joining us. Let's get to it. The DYOJO Podcast. I think I've got my back up. So, all right. Well, we are here with Michelle Blevins from Michelle Blevins from Restoration and Remediation Magazine, the premier content generator, aggregator in the property restoration space. Thank you for joining us today, Michelle. We've spoken before many times, and so I know that your background was in journalism, and I know as a young girl in high school, you're like, someday I will lead the flagship publication for property restoration, right? That's what you were thinking when you started your journey in journalism?
Yes, that was absolutely it. I totally knew that restoration companies existed, and this was my dream all along. Yes.
You're very prescient. Yeah. So I think I used that word correctly. But
prescient. That's amazing.
So tell us a little bit about that. So you wanted to get into journalism. Were you going after, were you going to be a reporter and be on I don't know what the premier news outlet is in Michigan there, but
I had always dreamed of maybe being a big newspaper reporter. I was going to say the New York Times. I don't know, but
Washington Post or yeah.
We said we weren't going to talk political here, so I don't know that I should even anyway. So I dreamed of being some kind of investigative reporter for a bigger newspaper, and my first job out of college was in a little teeny tiny town in Indiana. Kind of got dumped in there, which was interesting. Lots of political excitement and stuff like that. Made some county commissioners mad once in a while, and it was fine.
A little rabble rouser.
So long as you can make a name for yourself as an investigatory journalist, no matter how many friends you lose or people you leave dead and bloodied along the way, just so long as you can make a name for yourself as an investigatory journalist.
You know, if they're crooked, then I call them out and it's fine. So.
Well, you kind of said it. You had the Midwestern, you know, isn't it? It's supposed to be "Don't you know," right? In the Midwest.
I'm more of a Youper girl, so I'm more likely to say A.
A.
Yeah,
okay,
A.
that's
A.
where it carries over. Yep.
Uh-huh.
So in journalism, and then so I think we were talking about this. B&P has always owned Restoration and Remediation Magazine, right?
Yes, it has. Yep. The magazine's been around since 2007. There was a carpet cleaning magazine before that, that they dissolved right around the time that I started at R&R in 2015.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
And so how did that come to be where you crossed paths with Restoration and Remediation Magazine?
I was an executive producer for a TV station up in northern Michigan. My husband worked there as well, and we were both from the Detroit area, family in Detroit area, really wanted to get back to the Detroit area.
Okay.
And I was looking around at postings. I wasn't willing to take a job that wasn't interesting to me at that point.
Yeah.
We had gone through some bad bosses, bad jobs prior to that. So it's like, all right, this time we're going to be choosy about where we go. And I saw the posting for R&R, and I thought, well, that sounds kind of interesting. I liked being on the news side of things and seeing what happened. Like, you know, I saw the fires from the first day, and but once the fire trucks left, I had no idea what happened after that, or localized floods like just happened in Midland here. I saw all of that, but then I had the opportunity once when I worked for the newspaper to cover a flood restoration project where they like raised homes, redid them, that whole thing. But I thought that the position looked interesting and went in for the interview and got offered the job, and that was it.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, the other day I get this call from Brian. You'll remember Brian if you've been listening to the podcast or watching it on YouTube. We have the Pro versus Joe podcast. Pro versus Joe, brought to you by the DYOJO Podcast. But Brian and I share, you know, our approaches to the industry. Brian coming new to the industry, myself having several years of experience. But he calls me the other day and he's like, we need an emergency Pro versus Joe session. You know, I'm steamed, I'm disappointed, you know, those kinds of things. All of those fun, frustrated emotions. And I was like, well, what's up? And so they had been working for quite a while on this, on this contract, you know, helping so you got the client, the carrier, and the contractor, right? Everybody's got a responsibility. So they go out, they're trying to document the loss, put a scope together that reflects what it looks like to bring it to pre-loss conditions, and then working with the adjuster to confirm details, send photos, those kinds of things to support, you know, what they believe appropriate estimate is. And so go through all that, and they actually worked it all out with the adjuster. Everything is looking right. So the adjuster says, all right, just get a contract signed, and then we will work out the details for getting the money sent over. So Brian calls the client, and what are the options in this scenario? I think you probably already know where this is going, but right? What we'd all expect. The customer's like, we've appreciated all the work that you've put in. You've been so helpful and diligent. Of course, we're going to go with you. We can't wait to sign and even give you a deposit, right? That's option A. Option B, what would be the other extreme? It's taken so long. There's no way we're using your company. Oh my gosh, you guys are annoying. We hate you, and we're going to leave a bad review on Yelp, right? That would be the other extreme. But what's in the middle that's basically the same net result? That's right. Oh, Brian, you guys have been so great. It's not you, it's us. And we've decided to go in another direction. I've got a cousin that's a handyman who once worked on blah, 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 whatever, right? And so, we're going to go ahead and go in a different direction. We're not going to sign with you guys, right? So which one do you think it was? Of course, it's B, right?
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity. Farewell.
Yeah, it's not you, it's us. And so so that sparked a conversation of, okay, Brian's known, we've been talking for a while about getting the contracts dialed in, and honestly we've been talking about, the products and the services that Ed Cross offers, and talking, so we posed the question as well to, it's awesome that there's a group of peers on Facebook, that we posed it to the Restoration Rebels group as well as NORP, and got some really good feedback from both groups and ideas that people are doing and ways that they're executing that, from across the board, across the country. And so money can bring out the worst in people, right? Especially in uneasy times like this. And so you want to protect your money on the front end and on the back end. And this was more of a front end question, so that's what people brought up, like letters of intent or work authorizations or contracts, even on the front end, and how people are approaching that. So that was really good feedback. And so Brian was like, well, this is definitely the thing that's going to put us over the edge towards investing in what Ed Cross offers. And so the reason we had been talking about that, and full disclosure, Ed has become, thankfully, a sponsor of the DYOJO Podcast. But long before it was a financial thing, he's been investing in myself and in the industry. I'm sure you're aware. I know that's what made me more aware of what Ed was doing, and that there was a change at the RIA, the Restoration Industry Association. You have that Bill Loveland talk where one of the founders of Xactimate, got in front of a room of contractors, and there was a back and forth, which kind of opened the doors for more conversations to be happening, and hopefully a lot of really good progress coming down the pipe. And so, I don't know about you, when I'm thinking about hiring somebody, I always look at, I reach out to friends. Who do you know that does this and this? And have you had experience with this person? And then you look at their social media, are they involved in the community? Have they been investing in the community? Are they personable? Do you have access to the owner? Those kinds of things are always important to me. And so, I don't think anyone can say a bad thing about Ed in that regard. I mean, he volunteers his time. He was the founding committee chair for the Advocacy and Government Affairs Committee, AGA, with the RIA. He's got videos on his YouTube page, very active on social media and those kinds of things, giving away good advice. And so he's available for hire, obviously, as a lawyer. He's got 25 years representing contractors, and has developed also a line of products with those contractors in mind that either can't afford to retain a lawyer or just need some of the basic things like a standardized contract or these COVID contracts and work authorizations, those kinds of things. So Ed and his team at the restorationlawyer.com have put these resources together. And so here's this is the money shot, okay? These are all less than $1,000. They're available for immediate download in Word format. You can protect the business you've worked so hard to build. So with that Word format, obviously they're editable, is that the right word? You can edit them, get a local lawyer to help you, work through specifics in your state and those kinds of things. Protect the business you've worked so hard to build. Satisfaction, 100% guaranteed. If you're not satisfied, you contact Ed directly. He will refund the money. He will pull it out of his wallet and hand it to you. Actually, that's not recommended. I'm going to retract that. Let that be stricken from the record. This is a legal term. Strike that from the record. No cash will be handed directly from Ed's wallet to customers because that's not, COVID appropriate. So Ed is giving a special discount for the DYOJO Podcast listeners. If you use the promo code PODCAST at checkout for a $100 discount off every purchase you make between now and August 7th, 2020. Boom. Look at that. This is full circle, right? You're getting so much value out of listening to this podcast. Now you're getting value from Ed Cross, both from his input and a discount. Check out the restorationlawyer.com or send an email to edcross@edcross.com. The restorationlawyer.com, edcross@edcross.com. And we're hoping eventually, probably with Pro versus Joe, have a follow-up with Brian and Ed and the things that Brian's learning and how that's helped his business. So this is Ed is sponsoring, full disclosure, but I couldn't be more happy to promote the product, and a huge shout out and thank you to Ed for his support on the podcast and behind the scenes. So please check it out. Thank you. And so did you start out in editing then? Because you're the editor-in-chief now, right? And then, so is that how you started, or?
Yeah, that's where I started. B&P has about 50 publications, I think, and they all vary greatly in size. There are some that are based in New York City in the Empire State Building that have a huge editorial staff. R&R's one. So there's one editor, there's one art director that we share among brands, one production manager, one salesperson who's just on R&R. We have a publisher who does work on other brands as well. So really, there's only two actually full-time people who work on R&R. It's myself and then Darlene, our national sales rep.
Well, and that's so R&R is kind of unique, or maybe the sustainable version, right? Because it's always been a free magazine, and the revenue is driven from the sales, and then the content. So that the key is finding good content, so that which is true of any news media, right? Even in journalism, get good content good enough that the advertisers want to be involved, right? And you have a niche market. So something that is a little sad for me. You guys are transitioning from from print to digital, right?
Ron, where are you?
I'm in a glass case of emotion.
But obviously that's, even what Newsweek and big outlets have made that transition. What have those conversations been like, and is that how does that affect you as a journalist?
I would say I'm very fortunate when it comes to content, because I have people like you and Anissa and the Wylander group, and there are so many wonderful, well-educated people in the restoration industry that are constantly providing content to me. And I'm very thankful for that, because they're really the ones that make the magazine and the brand what it is. So I feel pretty thankful that R&R already has a very large digital footprint compared to maybe some other brands. So, it's going to be a change, but we're hoping to make some of the shift to have more education available to our readers. So instead of maybe IICRC paying for print ads, maybe they're paying to do a webinar through our platform. Because we have the ability to reach more people than a lot of people do. Our lists are big and stuff like that. So there are a lot of other options. We do a lot of e-blasts and stuff like that. So a lot of our content is marketed that way. So, we're in a really good place where a solid amount of our advertising and revenue is already on the digital side. So now it's just working to become more innovative to continue to change even more things to that direction.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we talked about offline, like my comfort zone is writing, but you encouraged me, and a friend of mine encouraged me, you gotta, and I've known that for a long time, you've got to supplement, the written content. You have to make the draw, right? And so the videos is the way people consume information. And then I think that creates the teaser, where if it's something that grabs their attention, then maybe they'll read on it, but it's just, if you're biting against the trends, then you're going to just dissolve, right? Your content's no longer.
Yes.
So
that was the big thing. B&P had been planning to shift to digital within the next 2 or so years. And then when the pandemic happened, it's like, B&P is huge on events. B&P, as a corporation, hosts a lot of events. So that was a big hit when all of these events had to be canceled or whatever. So, it's really, our CEOs are trying to be as innovative and forward thinking as possible. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to carry on and continue to educate our audience in fresh, new ways, maybe, instead of going away entirely. One of the things I'm excited about with the digital edition, you were talking about like videos and content like that, which has been a struggle for me as well. And so I'm thankful for the people that provide me content. And, you know, I also struggle to do like ask the expert interviews and stuff like that. I'm not always as comfortable as I wish I would be. But in our digital issue, there's going to be the potential for people who write articles to voice their article. So it could be almost like an Audible file where they're reading their article to the readers. And then they can kind of include some little tidbits if they want to add a little bit more in there or whatever. So that's another opportunity where, hey, if you're driving to a job and there's an article you've been interested in, now you're going to be able to listen to it as you're going.
Interesting.
Maybe right from the author. And so it won't be for every article. That's something totally new, but I'm kind of excited to see what we might be able to do with that.
Well, that got my wheels turning, because a lot of people use Audible, right? So if your magazine, you know, the monthly magazine was also in audio format, that'd be pretty interesting. Okay, that's cool.
Yep.
And I think too, it's you know, that quantity, quality, you know, that's I think what people need to understand overall, and that's kind of what we want to talk about, is, you know, the approaches of social media and whatnot, because that's definitely your area of expertise. It's like people are so scared of the medium. It doesn't lessen the quality of what you're presenting. It just means the trends are transitioning, right? So there's people like myself that like to still read magazines, and I still like the feel of a book in my hands as opposed to, you know, a digital reader. But you know, I spend so much time in the truck that, you know, you've got to listen to podcasts or Audible. And then there's books that you want to still read and reference. So you had posted on Facebook that you spoke at the first Nexus conference, which was 2017, did a breakout session on social media and branding. What are some of your thoughts on social media and branding, especially for property restoration and construction and insurance too, and why maybe some people are so hesitant to engage it?
I think social media is very important. I don't think that you need to necessarily embrace all of the platforms. I think Facebook is a good place to start. I think depending on your company, I've seen some embrace Instagram pretty well if you've got fun before and afters or whatever for a more visual cue. I don't see our industry really using Twitter very much. LinkedIn could be a really good one. But I think it's important just for, honestly, at this point in 2020, for credibility's sake. I mean, customers are going to go to you, if they Google you or Google property restoration in their area, whatever, they're going to see your website. They'll probably visit your website first, but then I check Facebook pages too whenever I'm looking for a business, and I read the reviews and I look and see what posts they have. And it's a really good way on the branding side to also give your company some personality. You know, once you start growing your following, you don't need to just post like educational or business pushes on there. You don't need to just be like, hey, call us if you have property damage and you need our help. You could post fun memes. You can post videos that you find helpful. You could post news articles, you know, anything. That's a really good way to engage with your audience outside of your business and show some personality in what you're doing. I like highlighting companies that are doing a really good job. That's what I tried to do in that presentation in 2017 and what I've tried to do since. So I like pointed out like JC Restoration in that one. And I can't remember, JC is the first one that comes to mind, but I pointed out a few that are really active on social media and do a really good job of mixing it up.
Do you remember some of those, like the nature of what they posted that stood out to you? Like some of the things that you're like, hey, this is a great way to be genuine and authentic and grab the attention of your potential clients?
I think the big thing with JC is their huge community footprint as it is. They already do a lot in their community, do like food drives and they're always doing stuff in their community. They're huge on charity and getting people involved. They have teams where like their teams within the company are like given days to go out and do things within their community. And it's stuff like that when they're able to then post these pictures and show that they really care about their community in a big way.
And it's genuine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's got to be the key metric in social media. Is it really doesn't matter how you approach it, just be genuine. Because if you're just copying somebody else, it's not going to work because it's not going to come across as, authentic.
Yes.
And it was funny. So you and I have talked offline. We had Water Damage Daily, right? They have the memes on Instagram, and they're only on Instagram, and it's not tied to the company webpage. He continues in a veil of secrecy. But it was pretty funny because his whole comments all throughout is show your face on social media, and then he's covered up in a lion mask. So, but that's for that. But that's, it's true. You got to have that mix and some kind of rotation and just try it out, experiment with it.
We now travel back in time to an earlier episode of the DYOJO Podcast.
We're here with, what we can say is Water Damage Daily, right? And so we want to protect the identity of the innocent and the I'm trying to think of those the intro to Law and Order.
In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crime and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories.
Yeah, but not that dramatic. So you started, I looked back, it looked like Water Damage Daily started February 11th, 2019. It looks like was your first post. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. I couldn't tell you which one my first post was, but I think that sounds right, February-ish of last year. I'm trying to remember.
I know fairly early in there, it might not have been the first one. It was an office meme or something like that.
I think the Michael Scott, when you get a call on a Friday or something like that.
Yeah. That sounds about right. It's in the early in there. So you have one, maybe let's phrase it this way. Do you have one do and one don't? One thing people should stop doing and one thing people should really consider start doing if they want to optimize their social media efforts?
One don't, I would say, is, a lot of the national franchise companies, they send out these super generic posts.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. This is what Mold is, and it has their logo.
Yeah.
That's a waste of time. That's wasting somebody's space in their feed. I skip right over those. I think they're dumb.
Yeah.
Get on there. Let someone see your face. Explain what mold is. Explain some of those health hazards, and be personable about it. Educate the people and give them a face. The do's, don't be. Well, I guess that's a don't, but don't be scared, I guess. The first video I ever posted, it was just a story, and I sat in my truck for 30 minutes.
Oh, dang.
And erased and recorded and erased and recorded.
Yep.
So what you should do is get in front of the camera. Don't be afraid. This is an industry where there's a lot of old contractors.
Yeah.
And no offense, but it's an old industry.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to take advantage of that. And we don't get a lot of work from Instagram.
Right.
But people are starting to recognize in our community, in our area of service, oh, hey, you work for... No, I'm not going to say it.
Hey! Yeah, Dan? You have any more of that gum? That's none of your damn business, and I'll thank you to stay out of my personal affairs.
Hey, you work for that company. I've seen that guy on Instagram. Or, oh, you're that guy. Or you work with that guy. Stuff like that. Let people know who you are. But, I don't know, just get in front of the camera and be yourself and be real. And I think that's what people want most.
And we were also talking about, like, really quick, when it comes to reviews and stuff like that, I know that some people don't have Facebook or whatever for those reasons, like they're afraid of the bad reviews, but bad reviews can be an opportunity to correct something and show the public, like, if there's a bad comment, figure out a strategic way to post and reply. That can show that you really care about your customers and have maybe fixed the problem or whatever. And so, don't look at bad reviews as necessarily a bad thing. And I think that most people at this point kind of take negative reviews with a grain of salt. If there's only a few, there's always going to be those kind of bad apple people that throw out a bad review because they just like to complain. So I think most consumers at this point are know how to pick and choose and know what's right and what's not.
Well, I can recently there's a podcast that's catered to electricians, and they had posted that there's one guy that also has a podcast, just always takes shots at them. And it's like, I was telling him, I go, I think most people like myself, if you look at that, when someone's just going off the rails about just ranting about nothing, people know, okay, this is, and at the same time, if all your reviews are just glowing, right, that you did nothing wrong, you kind of eliminate those, and it's the ones in the middle that are like legitimate. Because a lot of the sites, the aggregators, right, for, I don't want to name names, but some of the ones where you can go get contractors, it's no longer reliable because those people can pay to get themselves promoted and those kinds of things. Whereas Facebook, obviously Google and Facebook and Yelp and all of those, there's ways to manipulate that. But for the most part, you're getting it from real people,
Yes.
So
yes,
I think that's very valuable. I can remember I was working for a company and there was a gag order. Basically, they didn't want you saying that you were associated with the company or posting about the company, and that since changed. But what's so crazy is, like, even small companies, it's free. Right? You're silly. It may not get the return on investment that you're hoping for, but it's also free. There's no other than your time, And the secret is all of us are trying to figure it out and experimenting, right? No one knows really what works.
Yeah, that's true. So, there's some like tried and true things, like always have an image and make sure that your post is updated and change it up so you're not always serious. But other than that, you're right. We're always, and it's always changing. It changes daily. And, talking about show your face, when I first started, B&P had pretty strict social media policies.
Sure.
And so it was, pretty business. The editor wasn't supposed to be at all kind of associated with the brand in that way and whatever. And so that's evolved too. But the world of social media is an interesting one, but it can be really helpful for your business.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's tricky. Like you brought up Twitter. And I think like Instagram, obviously you need something that catches the eye. It's a photo-based platform, right? So your content can be the same, but you have to tweak it a little bit for each of the platforms. And it seems LinkedIn, you have an opportunity to put yourself in front of the decision makers, right? So you want it to be a little more polished. I think people, what's the meme? It's like, the way you look on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then, LinkedIn, and it is true. You got to kind of cater it. It seems Twitter is tricky because the benefit of Twitter is it actually creates a link back to your website or wherever content you're posting, which Instagram doesn't. But it's almost like you have to be controversial on Twitter to get any kind of traction, so, and that can be detrimental to a business. But I think it's interesting, the fear on social media.
Mom, can you pick me up? I'm scared.
Like we talked about, like people don't want to be on social media because they don't want to get bad reviews. But it's like, well, if you get bad reviews, that's an opportunity, like you said, to address it and fix something. So it's not really that they don't, they just don't want to fix the underlying problems, or hear about them.
Yeah. And most restoration companies get great reviews on there.
Yeah.
And, Anissa is always pushing for, I am going to get a stellar screaming client review when I'm done, and she will ask for it.
Yeah.
And
that's the other thing. You get the certificate of completion signed, ask them to write a review or offer them a $25 Starbucks card. Or I've seen people take videos with the client as they're doing a walkthrough, right? Those can be even more helpful. So it's tricky too, because you got to brag on yourself, and not everybody's, comfortable doing that, but you got to push your boundaries.
Yes.
So you have the breakout session at Nexus, and then every year you present at the Violins Women in Leadership conference as well.
Yes, they have been generous enough to sponsor the Women in Restoration Award every year. And
Nice.
So the very first year, the award was presented at Contractor Connection in 2016.
Oh, wow.
After that, we moved it, and it's been at the Wylander Executive Summit. Since then, that's where we presented the award every year. And so the Wylander Executive Summit is every June, although it was canceled for this year. It's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, the Executive Summit is Thursday and Friday, and then the Wednesday when people are coming in, that afternoon is a half-day women's event. And I have gotten to meet some amazing women in both cleaning and restoration through that event. I've loved being part of that. And so there's a potential that if the RIA reschedules their show, that there will be something similar there. We were going to present the Women in Restoration Award at the RIA show in April, but again, canceled. So I plan to announce the winner of the award this week. I don't know when we'll be sharing this, but probably by the time this is out, people will know who the winner is. It's somebody big, somebody from a company you used to work for.
Oh, really? Very cool.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. That's cool. And then, so you've got, and that's a big part of what Restoration and Remediation does, with the Women in Restoration Award, highlighting, women that are coming up. And it's so funny. I know I've worked with a lot of girls that ran circles around, some of our dudes. And so.
And now it's time for a not so subtle ad break.
Were you enjoying what you were listening to? Well, you're going to love this. Do you need some career inspiration? Yeah. Do you need to recharge your batteries?
Yeah.
Well, you're in luck. Pro vs. Joe from the DYOJO Podcast is a unique experience where our two hosts share the yin and yang perspectives for growing your career, managing change in your organization, and leading yourself so you can lead your team. Does that sound good? Yeah, told ya. So you can listen to Pro vs. Joe.
What is this, amateur hour?
37 minutes. Engage. On location podcast. Pro vs. Joe.
From the DYOJOpodcast.com. You can watch that on YouTube, listen on Spotify, or check us out on our website. Once again, that's the DYOJOpodcast.com. DYOJO.
So we found a really cool killer podcast that we want to describe here that is very amazing in the restoration industry. Yep. It's called the DYOJO Podcast.
On nose.
Can you stop doing that?
Do your job, dojo.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
RIA, so you were lined up to present at Contractor Connection then this year.
Yes.
And that got postponed, or is that canceled?
They canceled it. They had originally said when they first postponed it, maybe new dates in August, but since I haven't seen anything, I feel like it's probably safe to say that it's not happening. I can't, having a venue that big for that many people, I don't know. Events are going to have to get going again, but I don't know.
Yeah. That's one thing. I mean, the digital conferences or meetups, are great, but I hope, long term, it's, there's nothing beats being present with a bunch of people. Right. So, and
Zoom burnout is real. The irony that we're on Zoom right now, but Zoom burnout is real.
Well, I think, I did a panel not that long ago, and, it's harder, right? Especially with the digital, and even when you're talking one-on-one, sometimes there's delays, and when you're in person, you can pick up the cues a little quicker when somebody's getting ready to say something or wants to interject. And then when you add multiple people, it's a lot more complicated. So, I think one-on-ones, it does pretty well, but the panel concept is a lot harder. So at Contractor Connection, you were going to present on strategic branding, right?
Yes. Yep.
So, all right, here we go. Give your presentation.
Blood alone moves the wheels of history.
No, thank you. Hard pass. I was fortunate enough, if I'm being totally honest. I mean, when did they cancel? Gosh, March, and the conference wasn't going to be until June, May.
June. Yeah.
May. So I had time. So it was not together. My summary was together, but my presentation was not together yet. But
could you share in your mind, so what's unique about you? So you're editor-in-chief for Restoration and Remediation Magazine, And then also you do recruiting with Wylander, right? So you're interacting with applicants and high-level executives and those kinds of things. So you have a really good perspective of, and you do a great job. Your journalism background, I've seen reports where you try to go out to sites if you can, or meet up with companies. And so in the thought of strategic branding, right? Branding really is just trying to communicate what you are, right? Through social media, not trying to create something, but just how do we communicate this? So can you think of some simple, maybe do's and don'ts for strategic branding that, our thousands of viewers could benefit from?
You'll get there. I would say brand management is much beyond social media and stuff like that. It really comes down to your company culture. The better your culture is, the more your brand and what it represents is going to go out to your job sites. So it's going to spill over into how your team cares for your customers, cares for the community, the way they carry themselves in your community, especially if they're logoed up. So I think culture kind of leaks into everything, which I believe has a lot to do with your brand management. Then it kind of starts at the top, and you need to create this culture of success and service and high quality work and stuff like that, and a team atmosphere and all of those things. And so social media does come into it. The reviews that you get, the way you post on social media, like I was talking about with JC, if they're posting like things that they're doing in the community, training that they do for other restoration companies, because they have a huge training facility. I think that it really all goes back to company culture, and the healthier your culture is, the more your brand is going to be cohesive. And that goes, part of what it was going to be for Contractor Connection is talking about how if you have a healthy brand, that's also going to help you with TPAs and working with the different carriers and stuff like that. If you have a good relationship with adjusters, your company has a good reputation in your marketplace due to its brand and its culture. That's going to help you a lot with, your projects. Yeah.
You have something to swing back, to balance the, leverage your capital, right? Your social capital. Yeah. Yep. Well, that's interesting that you bring up culture. Again, culture is what you are, right? So if you're, rotten or toxic or even just mediocre, then, it's kind of hard to, because then even your employees, I think Eric Sprague brought that up. Eric and Larry brought that up. I don't remember. I think it was on their podcast, the Blue Collar Nation podcast. Like, you have to market to your people as robustly as you market to the public, because if you're out there telling the public, this is what we are, this is what we do, but like there's no training and there's no consistency in your internal process, it's BS, right? You're lying, you are a liar.
Tell her the truth.
And sometimes I think inadvertently, right? You're not thinking about, well, you've always been taught market. And, it's got to reflect in, and that's like, some people are getting called out for the COVID stuff, right? Where they say, they hand their customer, here's the sheet of what we do. And Amy on episode 7 brought that about mold, right? They say they follow the the S520, but they don't actually do that.
What I'm seeing a lot of the contractors doing, with or without a protocol from a third party, I'm often seeing on their estimates, and I do review estimates for our clients just to kind of look at what the contractor is saying that they're going to do, what methods they're going to be proposing. And oftentimes I'm seeing methodology that's not in the standard, but at the end of their estimate or somewhere in the body of their estimate, it says we follow IICRCS 520. Guys, if you're out there, remediation contractors, get this book. Read it. Honestly, so our protocols are written pretty much based on this standard. So when I see that they say we're going to come in and apply massive amounts of chemicals and then we're going to fog, that's not in there.
Yeah.
And then their estimate says they're using those methodologies. Yeah. So if you're going to quote a methodology that you're going to propose the remediation, make sure you're following the protocol.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's going to come back and bite you if you haven't done it correctly.
And so whatever you're presenting should be consistent with what you're actually doing. I think that's a really
don't
good
make
point.
promises you can't keep.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to COVID, don't say you're going to come in and disinfect and it's going to be good for a month or whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, or telling people that your people are going to be in PPE and do touch point cleaning, and you don't do either, And so, but I think that's, so many people get caught up in culture, branding. Those can be just, meaningless words, right? Where it should be, your culture is what you are. So rather than saying this is what we want to be, you need to start from, well, this is where we are, and then what do we need to do to get there, and brand as well. And then what may still happen, right, is the experience in September in Vegas.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, I've spoken with Larry Cooper a few times, and he has been talking to Paris pretty often. And as of right now, it's a go. It sounds like they have a lot of plans in place. Vegas did reopen, I think, for gambling in a lot of places this week.
Yeah.
Some plexiglass dividers and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see, but it does sound like it's going to happen. So that is exciting. So R&R is going to be part of putting together 2 panel discussions for that event. One is related to our brand new award. The nomination process is going right now. It's the Ladder Award. So we wanted to create an award that celebrates young upcoming leaders in the restoration industry. So 35 and younger as who the award is for. So
clearly I qualify.
Yes, of course.
And you're like 27, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Anyway, don't look at the quarantine gray hair up here. Fine. So we've gotten some really exciting nominees so far, some people that I think are pretty deserving.
Yeah.
So the nomination period for that goes through June 26th. There's a link right on our homepage. And I'm hoping to take some of the finalists from that and hopefully even the winner and create a panel of young leaders for the conference in September. So we're going to present the award at the show so long as it happens.
Yeah.
The initial plan was to present it at the pool party that they have one night. Of course, we don't know what Vegas is going to look like, but that's the plan. So pulling together a panel of, next generation leaders, maybe what the next step looks like in our industry as we're kind of, there's more generational change over all the time and stuff like that. So what does this new generation look like? I think there are things that are going to look a lot different for restoration companies, like Matterport. I think is going to be a huge game changer. Are we going to have estimators who go out to job sites anymore? Or are they going to be mainly desk estimators? What is that going to look like?
As we talk about mixing young with old, wisdom with passion, and all of the elements that come into this industry, want you to know that the DYOJO Podcast is here for you. We're on your side. Whatever side you're on, we're on that side. Just imagine we're there with you. But most recently, something we did for you, the listener and the watcher, we went undercover. Yeah, we went deep into enemy territory. We went behind enemy lines. We pulled back the veil of secrecy to uncover the dark truths of working with adjusters. Whoa. So we tricked this sap, a senior multi-lines independent insurance adjuster. We tricked him into thinking he was our friend. I'm using air quotes for you on the audio version.
I once worked with a guy for 3 years and never learned his name. Best friend I ever had.
Yeah, tricked him into thinking he was our friend so we could get all the dirty data, on tricks that adjusters play behind the scenes to just mess with us honest restorers that never make mistakes. Actually, Kirk really is a friend. And so he shares some of what he sees, just some practical advice for estimators, restoration contractors that can make your life and the lives of those that you work with a little more seamless. And then some of the things that's helped him as a insurance adjuster become a better estimator, better at capturing the data and those kinds of things. So we had a real practical conversation. Please check out the DYOJO Podcast, episode 23, and all of the deep, dark research we did going behind the scenes for you, the listener and observer, watcher of the DYOJO Podcast. Also, Kirk is a contributor, small plug, shameless plug, for the book that we're getting ready to release, Be Intentional Estimating, about developing the right mindset and habits for success with estimating in property restoration claims. Thank you for listening. Okay, bye.
There's just going to be so many changes, so I'm interested in hearing from the next generation of leaders for our industry and what that's about.
Yeah.
The other panel is going to be on lessons from COVID. I think that we're learning a lot, and so the panel is pretty diverse. It's as of right now, it's Jeff Jones, who's the director of forensic operations for the Global Biorisk Advisory Council.
Okay. Yep.
Nate Stewart, who is a certified industrial hygienist, and then there's some restorers coming in as well. So Kelly Cams, who is the COO of ATI, Lisa Lavender, who writes for R&R, she's the COO of Fire Water Restorations, Restoration Technical Institute, all those things. And Matt Jarvis, who is the VP of a restoration company here in the Detroit area that's pretty large. So I think that there are a lot of lessons to be learned and taken into the next pandemic, because we're going to have more most likely. So I'm looking forward to quizzing all of these people in September.
Yeah. Well, I think I've spoken about it a couple of times with different outlets, but I think COVID, at least when it initially hit, it really, especially those companies that slowed down, it caused us to look at how we treat our training and those kinds of things. And it's a roller coaster with every company I've been with, where, you hit the slow season, revenue slows down, and it gets to just enough of a painful point where everybody's like, things are going to change. We're going to fix it. We're going to do all the things we know we've needed to do.
At last.
And then just right at the point when whoever's in charge is ready to pull the trigger, a big project comes in, or there's an upswing in revenue, and it's just off the table. We're just back to business as usual.
Mr. Hammond, I think we're back in business.
And so I think, those companies that use this time and this event to adapt, they're gonna be all the stronger for it. And there's gonna be plenty of companies that it's business as usual. And then there's going to be, unfortunately, a lot of companies that get taken out, not because of COVID specifically, but because of underlying issues that COVID, just envelops or becomes maybe the last nail in the coffin. So that's awesome. So you got the Women in Restoration Award, highlighting women's effort. And then you got the young leaders. That's, I think those are awesome things to celebrate, because that is, like you said, the next generation, and if we're not listening, then it's going to be a problem. Because that term millennials is it's over. Like they're the workforce. That is, I mean, what millennials are. I think I'm technically a millennial, and
I technically am too.
Yeah.
My husband refuses to be part of it, but I think I was always the type that thinks that millennials kind of got a bad rap, because there are actually a lot of really good qualities that were just misunderstood, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I always tell people, like, I've worked with boomers and Gen X and millennials, and there's, bad apples in all of those categories. There's plenty of, lazy people in every group. And the funny thing is, like, with all of them, you have to train all of them, and it's a little bit different. The way they receive information is a little bit different. as individuals, not just as generations. So, you have to adapt, or else you're going to to die. Just like social media, right? You can have your fear and loathing and avoid it. So I guess I don't want to steal too much more of your time, but is there, as we talk about social media and branding, any more nuggets that you want to drop and bestow upon the audience? Or can you think of anything recently that grabbed your attention in a real positive way?
Goodness.
Put you on the spot,
it's fine. In the midst of COVID, I've seen companies where this has to do with brand management and culture and all of that. Again, like I was talking about Matt Jarvis just now in the Detroit area. And I know that there are a lot of other restoration companies doing this. They've been doing like free cleaning of police vehicles on the inside, disinfection after every shift and whatever. And they've been doing a lot of that. And I've passed parking lots where restoration companies have been set up and they're doing like these disinfection services. And there was another one handing out hand sanitizer in a parking lot a few weeks ago when all of this really started. And so it's posts like that, I think, that really stand out, that reflect just how wonderful this industry is. I think that that's what drew me into this industry the most. It really is a bunch of people who really care about others, and there's a servant's heart. And granted, yes, everybody's in it to make a living and for money, but you have to have some sort of servant's heart to be here. I don't think that you could be a restorer without truly caring about people and their properties and what comes out of them. That's one of the questions that I ask when I'm screening candidates for Wylander. I ask what they think customers after a fire or a flood or whatever in their house are looking for in a restoration company. Because I think it's really important that people understand that.
Have some kind of perspective. Well, I don't know if you've heard it, but so I've started like a podcast within the podcast, the Pro versus Joe. And so, and that, it's been fun because on the one hand, there's just a lot you take for granted when you've been in the industry for a while. And like I said, like, I think I'm on 18 years, but that for some people that's a lot. And some people they're like, you're just getting started, and,
I think that's a lot.
And so, but there's a lot you do take for granted. There's some things I'll say and Brian will be like, wait, say that again, and it's just, you take for granted. And so I do think, anybody listening, if you have a responsibility of training, or you're a manager or a high level, it's important to do like a leadership download to share with people all your years of experience. And so that's why that having a regular training meeting is important, because people should be able to ask questions, and not everybody understands your why, and like you said, I think Lisa was one of them that they had posted. Their company went around and was handing out hand sanitizer. I think that was made by like one of the local breweries or something like that. So there's been just some really cool stuff. There are people have said, what is something I can do? And I believe, like, especially there's a lot going on right now, right? And that's, I think too often we can say, well, that's this party's problem or that person's problem, rather than just saying, well, what can I do on a local level in my sphere of influence, whether it's COVID or the unrest that's happening, in the country, or the social media, or all of that. And, enjoy what you do, but also find something that you enjoy and figure out a way to make it work, so. I appreciate you big time. You've been key in helping me, challenge me to grow and expand. And, Restoration and Remediation Magazine, I think, still is the premier. Like, there's always good content. Like you said, multiple voices, from very different perspectives, on the magazine platform, and then on social media and stuff like that. So you do a great job of pumping up the industry, and then that encourages people in a positive way, positive peer pressure, right, to step your game up, so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I hope that R&R continues to earn that top spot from more people. And we're going to see what the future holds with this digital transition. But I think for the most part, other than not getting a magazine in the mail, there's only going to be positive changes. I'm thankful for the position I'm in, and to be in this industry and the relationships I've gotten to establish while being here. I'm, thankful for all of those, and I don't take any of them for granted, yourself included. I appreciate all your great content and the great content I get from others as well. So anytime I can find people who have amazing knowledge to share, or talents or whatever, I I hope that R&R can be a good platform for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's you know, in addition to aggregating the content, you also write quite a bit, and there's some really good articles. So, so that R&R magazine it's rnrmagonline.com.
Yes, good job.
Okay, and then you guys are on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well, and there's
on Twitter, but not as active as other places.
Yeah. I think actually yours has one of the more robust followings there on Twitter. You guys aren't on TikTok or what, Snapchat? So
hard pass. Maybe TikTok. I can kind of get sucked into the. I have never posted anything, but you can kind of get sucked into the whirlpool there.
Yeah, well, and you know, as of right now, I have some friends that use it, and it's kind of almost like Twitter was, where it's like news in real time, right? And so. I
used to use Twitter a lot more for R&R, but over time I just was like, I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels here. I would rather invest this time in platforms where it's getting engagement. So,
well, I think I listened, Anissa Coy, she was on, I believe it was on Blue Collar Nation podcast. She mentioned, don't invest where you understand, right? And then don't burn out or worry about those other platforms, so. Or if you need to, get somebody that can help you with the ones that you don't understand, so that way you can focus on where you're strong. So that's awesome. So hopefully we see you at the experience in September in Vegas. You said again, the Young Leaders panel with a pool party, and then lessons from COVID panel. Was that the, were you trying to do the?
No, I can't do that.
Live long and prosper.
I was crossing my fingers. It's fine.
So we're
a little double jointed. It's fine.
So we're fear and loathing.
Keep my hands to myself.
Fear and loathing in social media and live long and prosper. I think that's a great way to close it up. So thank you so much, Michelle. The Michelle Blevins, from Editor-in-Chief from Restoration and Remediation Magazine.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Boom. Episode 25, which is what, our sesquicentennial episode. Yeah, we use big words around here. So, and the Michelle Blevins joins us for our 25th episode of the DYOJO Podcast to drop her wisdom and knowledge from, being a member of the community for, and leading the charge as the premier media outlet for the property restoration community. So I think the thing that sticks out in my mind, again, we went through the fear and loathing, right? The terror. Fear of bad reviews should not be a deterrent to engage in your market through social media. Michelle brings up a great point. If you happen to get negative reviews, that's a great opportunity for you to get honest feedback from customers. Unfortunately, you would hope that they would feel more comfortable, sharing that with you directly. I know, whenever we were in the field, we're like, is there anything else we can do further? Setting the expectation up front, like, we want to give you a 5-star or 10-star, whatever your rating scale is, experience, and please let us know along the way. I always tried to make it real clear with clients, if you have an issue, please call me first. Because if you and I can work it out, we have a lot more options.
Help me help you. Help me help you. Help me help you.
Then if you escalate it, with your insurance company, it kind of takes some of the leverage out of it. So please contact me first. If you can't get a hold of me, this is my, project manager, superintendent. Here is my general manager's, cell phone number. And if you can't get a hold of one of us, then yes, please escalate it. But please give us the opportunity to address any issues first, and then trying to set up like, okay, what day of the week for longer projects, doing a walkthrough, and then, email and phone call check-ins, those kinds of things. Do you prefer text? Do you prefer email? Do you prefer phone calls? Some of that can be generational. A lot of that's people, another big thing is, if you've got two partners, right, making sure both people are updated, because sometimes, shocker, not every partnership speaks consistently and clearly with each other and relays what you've been telling. Oftentimes you'll tell the husband something and it doesn't get relayed to the wife, etc. And so, and then you get a phone call because someone's confused, and it's like, what are both of your emails so that we can CC you if somebody else is involved? Especially those commercial losses with multiple parties, making sure everybody gets an update, that is important or feels like they're important. So, but yeah, I thought that was a great point. A negative review can provide an opportunity to address shortfalls in your process. And then if you document that, you could turn that into a positive, right? We are not a company that never makes mistakes, but when this gets brought up, such as this one, this is how we address that. And there's a lot that can be gained from that, right? Most of the times that's what we want from our relationships with our clients or our adjusters. That's why you're developing agents with insurance, or developing relationships with insurance agents or those kinds of things, is not because you're guaranteeing you'll never make a mistake, but you want some grace, when you do make a mistake.
He poked me in the eye. Captain Insano shows no mercy.
And then show them like, okay, we're on it. We're going to take care of it. Michelle talks a lot about developing your culture, which, in the 4 P's of the Blueprint for Success, P1 and P2, invest in your people and your process, right? Branding starts with building your team from within to be clear and consistent in your values, and then those distinctives that make your organization unique in the market. It's amazing. I was just talking to somebody, John Downey, in an episode coming up, in the majority of his experiences in the carpet cleaning industry. And you'll recognize he started Clean Facts magazine, and talking about how it's amazing how some people just by presenting the information a little bit differently can take something that's very basic in our industry that we take for granted, but make it a marketing thing. And as long as they're not being inauthentic or lying, then that's genius, right? You present to a customer something that we all do, but you make it a distinctive, and customers aren't always aware about the intricacies or basics in the industry, but sometimes it's just communicating better than your competitors. So I recently wrote an article for Project Management Times. I know you all read it, and you had it printed off and it's framed in your house, and thank you. But it's for project managers and those in a position of leadership. So it's crazy if you there's so many good podcasts out there to listen to for people and from people and by people in our industries, for property restoration, construction, insurance, facilities management, project management, those kinds of things. So if you commute frequently, or you take time out to exercise, or you go on walks, those kinds of things, it's a great way to kind of supplement your learning, right? To hear what other leaders are doing and inspire your personal and professional development. So you can find that as PM Times. The title is Project Management and Service Leadership Podcast. Pretty easy, but we talk about Blue Collar Nation from Eric Sprague and Larry Wilburton, IAQ Radio from Cliff and Joe, the GMS Podcast from Jarrett Steer, Flip This Risk, Straight Talk from Jeff Cross, the Claim Clinic from Andy McCabe, Profiles in Risk from Insurance Nerds, and of course the DYOJO Podcast. So thank you for listening. Coming up, we have another Pro versus Joe, episode 6. I'm excited about this one. This really should be the Pro versus Pro. Brian's background prior to starting his own construction company and focusing in property management was as a property manager. So especially in the commercial space, and I know in property restoration, that's a huge target. Those are people that we want to get work from, especially in the commercial realm. And so he'll share his experiences, how they develop relationships with contractors, how to provide value, create value with those kind of clients in that realm. So I think that's going to be really helpful to property restoration, contractors. And then we go behind enemy lines again with, just toughing it out for y'all. But this with a third-party consultant, a TPC, and we learned some of the history with a guest. Wrote that down. But so going behind enemy lines, enemy lines with a third-party consultant, tough stuff. And then somebody that transitioned from property restoration into third-party consulting. So. And then get to talk. I mentioned his name, but John Downey, get to talk about some of the history. He wrote an amazing article that captures some of the history into property restoration from the carpet side, which, as you know, this industry didn't exist. It was, carpet cleaners or contractors that started learning ways, to adapt their services to working with insurance companies and innovating. So, and again, thank you to Ed Cross for sponsoring this episode. Ed has been a big supporter from day one. He's one of the first interviews I did before it was even really a podcast. It was just going to be 3 questions with a pro to supplement some of the writing for the Intentional Restorer with Restoration and Remediation Magazine, and then with encouragement from like Jarrett Steer, on how he goes about his process and that kind of thing. I was like, well, I think I could turn this into, I already have the video on YouTube. I could turn that into a podcast as well and then adapt a lot of that. So Ed's been a big supporter. He is on episode 3, and we have another video with him talking about the history of the industry and RIA's efforts. So please, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast, subscribe, rate, and share wherever you are watching or listening. That'd be a big help. Our viewership is going up, and we're super excited about that. So thank you. Have a great day.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.